So I'm sure the idea that God needs our forgiveness for all the atrocities that happen in this realm is probably heresy and blasphemy to a lot of people. And I get it, but I don't care. This truth has stuck with me for the last year or so. And I've really struggled on how I want to articulate this point that deism is an act of forgiving God. Maybe it's not so much about forgiving God himself. I don't think he needs our forgiveness. It needs our forgiveness so much. But maybe it does. If you consider the idea that we're supposed to be created in its image. If you follow that line of logic, that you and I are somehow created by a creator in its image, he, she, it, whatever you want to call the creator. If we are created in its image, couldn't it be possible that it is just as messed up as we are down here on earth? Again, I'm sure it's totally nonsense to a lot of religious folks, but if that's the case, then you could say that God might need our forgiveness. Look, I'm not afraid of it being offended at this line of logic, because my God's big enough to forgive me for my own naive thoughts. But I think this is more than a thought. See, for the last probably 10 years or so, I'd kind of invented deism for myself before I'd heard anybody talk about it. And that's why it was so interesting for me to discover that other people have been talking about it. And it's been so fascinating to watch all of you talk about it in the comment sections. And thank you, by the way. That's why I continue to do this. This will only be the third video I've done. And there's tons of comments on this thing. I should be doing a weekly show on this topic, and I would love to. I feel a calling to do this. But I struggle with how to articulate this specific point. And this is probably the 100th try. I hope this take sticks. We're going to try to make sure it sticks. But, you know, when we look at the atrocities that are happening, and I'm not talking politics here, but you look at the children suffering in the Middle East, or you look at the children that are dying in Maui, for that matter. It doesn't really matter where the pain comes from. When you enter this realm, you're born into bondage in some ways. You have to work for your entire life. You're going to suffer no matter who you are, rich or poor. Some are going to obviously suffer more than others, and that's sad too. But it's unforgivable. A lot of the things that we all have to go through. I look at my mother, and her watching her mother lose her mind from dementia, and watching my grandmother struggle with losing her mind. There's no lesson to be learned there, especially for my grandmother, whose mind is slipping away. It's terrifying. And there's no reason for it. And there's no satisfying or getting rid of that fear for her or my mother. Now, you might be able to argue that my mother could learn some cosmic lesson out of this, watching her own mother deteriorate. I don't know. I seriously doubt it. And either way, probably still unacceptable and unforgivable from my perspective. But it's important to forgive those things that are the most unforgivable in life. It's easy to forgive the things that are easily forgivable. It's not that difficult. And we all know, once we reach a certain maturity, I suppose, that forgiveness isn't so much about forgiving that person, like blessing them with your forgiveness. That's half of it, maybe. The other half is for yourself, letting yourself go, releasing that pain so you don't have to deal with it. You really have to see it for yourself. You can't be told. And I think that's who I'm talking to here out in YouTube land, which is, it gives me the chills thinking about it. I think I'm talking to the people who are commenting on these videos are the people who, I think you've seen the truth. Now, once you've seen the truth, it's not even close to the beginning of the end of your problems, because the truth is going to give you So many more questions usually than answers. It's a beautiful part of it, but it's also, it can also be maddening in some ways. But I think there's hope because I'm kind of going through this progression myself where I've had 10 years to think and invent my own deism and realize it's about seeing the truth for yourself. And once you've kind of had a chance to let that truth mature on the shelf and you can kind of sit back and realize what it is for what it is, I believe that deism is the act of a forgiving God. And it might just be as important for us as it is for the Creator, right? What an ultimate act of love, right? He puts us through all this crap, knowing that it's like a metaphor for what he did to his own son, right? If you believe the Bible, we're all put here. We're all going to be crucified. And it's going to suck. You're going to wear a crown of thorns one way or another. I don't care who you are. You could be the richest man in the world. You're probably going to wear a lot more thorns than a lot of people realize. I've met rich people, and I've talked about this before. They're the most miserable people on the planet because they realize they can buy everything, but they can't purchase health. They can't purchase mental health or spirituality or spiritual awakening or truth or life. Can't purchase the important stuff. I had a chance to take my family to Maui back in May of 2023. It was a great time. I took my daughter to the same place where my wife and I had our honeymoon 12 years prior to that. And 2 years after that, we returned, just her and I. And then 10 years later, we took our daughter back and we went down to Lahaina and ate at our favorite little spot, the Sunrise Cafe, right there in Lahaina Harbor. We probably ate there 12 times in 2 weeks we were there. Every morning for breakfast. It was like the best little breakfast place. It was like a halfway outside cafe with like some home ovens, basically cooking the meals, and the people running the place were obviously locals, but the place is gone. I'm grateful we got to take our daughter there and show her this place that was so special to us. I think it's the dichotomy of seeing what happened to that place in paradise and knowing how rich and beautiful downtown Lahaina was, and realizing that even those people on vacation couldn't escape the fires of hell, right? I know it's dramatic, but the contrast to me really stops me in my tracks. It's the kind of thing that really makes me think. And it reminds me that there is no escape from the awful crap that's going to happen. And you need to forgive God for that, because you are going to spend a few hours on the cross, metaphorically speaking, one of these days. And it's going to suck. I'm confident that there's life on the other side. And I don't know if you've been watching these videos on YouTube about near-death experiences, NDEs. I think there's supposed to be something in the movie theater, the box office, if it hasn't already come out, that I really want to see. Because, sometimes they're really cheesy and everybody's got their own interpretation of what happens on the afterlife. But it's fascinating to see some of the similarities between the stories and some of the through lines. God, I hope when we die that we get to remember this realm, as awful as it is, because it all the struggles and all the accomplishments and all the letdowns, as bad as they are, it seems like an awful waste if I'm not going to be able to come back and watch this as a movie someday. And some people are saying it's like an interactive movie too. I've heard this a lot from people who've had the near-death experience. Some people say that they got to come back and relive experiences, but the odd twist is, and this is the one thing a lot of them share, is this weird twist in that scenario, is that they get to live those past experiences in their own life and they can toggle from perspectives of people who were part of that experience. So you could experience, a fight you had with your mom from your mom's perspective or your dad's perspective, and be able to feel how they were feeling about you at the time. So if we get to go back and learn in 3D from our past experiences like that in the afterlife, that tells me maybe we never stop learning. And we're just quite possibly still incubating in our little eggs in a pretty big universe that we can't even possibly comprehend yet. Anyway, good talk. I really wanted to keep doing these, so keep the comments coming. I read all of them, even if I don't comment back. Thank you. And keep them coming. We'll talk soon. Bye.